Rambam. We are in the laws of Shabbos. We began yesterday, the third book. Let's get right to it. Hold on 1 second. Interesting. Yeah, let's reshare. Okay, there we are. Chapter 3, the laws of Shabbos. It is permissible to begin the performance of a forbidden labor on Friday, forbidden on Shabbos, not on Friday, obviously, even though the labor is completed on its own accord on Shabbos itself. For the prohibition against work applies only on Shabbos itself, on the Sabbath itself. Moreover, when a task is carried out on its own accord on Shabbos, we are permitted to derive benefit from what has completed on Shabbos. Right, so what does imply? What does that mean? We may open an irrigation channel to a garden on Friday, causing it that it will continue to fill throughout the Shabbos day. We may place, that's one, we may place burning incense under garments, causing them to continue to be fragrant throughout the entire Shabbos. That was the way they put fragrance by clothing. They didn't wash clothing all the time, but they put fragrance so it shouldn't smell. We may apply salve to the eye or a bandage to a wound, causing them to continue to heal throughout the Shabbos, right? So on Friday, before Shabbos, you put what kind of, whatever it is on the Band-Aid, and now it's healing you throughout Shabbos. That's okay, because you didn't do it on Shabbos. We may mix ink with herbs before the night and let the mixture soak throughout the entire Shabbos. We may place wool in a vat or strands of flax into an oven so that a color continues to change throughout the entire Shabbos, because it's happening all by its own, right? You're not doing the work on Shabbos. The work is being done on its own on Shabbos. We lay out snares for wild beasts, birds, and fish at nightfall before Shabbos so that we continue to be captured throughout the entire Shabbos. We may load the beams of an olive press or the round stones of a grape press at nightfall so that the liquids will continue to flow throughout the entire Shabbos. Similarly, we may light a candle or a fire before the evening so that it burns throughout the entire Shabbos. What do? Right? When you make cholent, right? It's cooking throughout Shabbos. You're not allowed to cook on Shabbos, but you did it before Shabbos, so it can continue throughout Shabbos. Okay, halacha number 3. A pot may be placed on the fire. Oh, okay, or meat may be placed on the oven or over coals on Fridays so that it may continue to cook throughout Shabbos with the intent that it be eaten on Shabbos. With regard to this matter, however, there are certain restrictions that were enacted lest one stir the coals on Shabbos. It's called shemayachte. In Hebrew, it's the term that you might stir the coals. Why would you do that? To better the food, right? You want to increase the temperature, for example, right? Because you want to, want it to cook better. So we're afraid that maybe you would do that, not thinking, not that you would do it purposefully, but so there's restrictions to this. So what is implied? When food has not been cooked to the extent that it is ready to serve, water that has not been boiled, or food that has been cooked to the extent that it is ready to serve, but the longer it cooks, the better it tastes. It may not be left on a fire on Shabbos, even though it was placed there before the commencement of Shabbos. Why? Lest one stir the coals to complete the cooking process or to cause it to cook more thoroughly, accordingly, right? So that means putting it on the fire direct, right? That's what it's talking about, right? Accordingly, it is permissible to leave food cooking or if one removes the coals or covered the coals in the range with ash, and then thin chips from the combing of flax. The coals burn low, for then they are covered with ash, or the fuel used was straw, stubble, or the feces of the small animal, for then no coals will remain. In this instance, it's obvious that a person has diverted their attention from his food, hence a decree was not enacted forbidding the food to be left on the fire, lest he stir the coals. So the issue was with coals specifically back in the day, right? Because coals is something easy to stir to make a greater fire, right? But if you're talking about other forms of fire, that it would not be like ash that's left or stubble, straw, and the like. So in those instances, you're not going to stir it because it's not going to create. It's not something that's going to create a better fire. And as a result, the decree. Remember, this is a rabbinic decree, right? Because maybe you might come to stir the coals. Shemiachta. Okay. When does the above apply? With regard to a range whose heat is minimal. With regard to an oven, in contrast, when even one remove the coals, covering them with ash, and use straw or stubble as fuel, it's not allowed to leave food in it or on it. Similarly, one should not put food close to it, because this is a much hotter oven. This applies to food that was not cooked to completion or was completely cooked, but will benefit from continued cooking. Like a stew gets better, with more cooking, right? Or something that wasn't completed. So, right? Since an oven was very hot, the person will not divert his attention from the fire. Hence, we suspect that he will stir the small fire that remains, even if the straw or stubble, or even if it is covered. Okay. So in that instance, it'd be a problem because it retains the heat, and you're stirring it will make a difference. In the other kind of kira, it's a kind of range. It has less heat, and therefore, I guess the way the structure of it, you will not be by stirring it cause any greater heat or enough to make a difference at least. Why does his sages forbid leaving food on the oven even if the fire was removed? Because a person can remove only a majority of the coals and their intense heat, most intense heat, is impossible to remove the entire fire so that not even sparks remain. Since an oven's heat is very warm, we suspect that he will stir the fire so that the sparks remain in the oven will burn more. Okay, because you can't remove it all, so therefore there's always suspect that maybe you would be, forgetful and stir the coals. Okay, unfortunately, I have to stop here. Yeah, that's before the holiday. There's a lots going on. Okay.